Welcome to the Screen the Screener College Basketball Podcast with your hosts, Mike Randall and Gus Kearns.
Welcome in, listeners, to the Screen Screener College Basketball Podcast. We're always talking everything college hoops. You could have been anywhere else in the dial, but you chose to be here with us, Mike and Gus, and we appreciate that. Mike, March is creeping a little bit closer here. I think we need to break down a couple of things that happened over the weekend and maybe look forward a tiny bit. The weekend rundown is lengthy. Let's get started. How's everything going over there? You good? Tell the people. What's up?
Let's get this party started. I mean, we have content galore. That's the best part about this. It's total content galore right now.
All right. Let's start the rundown for the listeners with a game that my daughter and I watched a little bit together over the weekend. We'll go Big East. Number 19 Marquette fell to the oncoming train that is the Providence Friars, 84-72. Alpha Diallo is grabbing an offensive rebound right now while you listen to this podcast. Mike, what do you take away from Marquette falling to Providence and Providence really righting the ship here and Coach Cooley doing a great job getting his ducks in a row?
Yeah, Providence getting things going. You're a garden variety, dangerous team right now when we get to March, a team that has holes, but a team that still is dangerous and flammable. They've won 5 of 7, including road games at Butler and Georgetown. Defense is their calling card. That's what's going to bring it every single night for them. Top 40 in adjusted defensive efficiency, 3-point percentage, top 14 in steal percentage defensively also. Massive game Saturday at Nova. That's going to tell us a lot right there if they can get that. Nova not blowing teams out, did not blow St. John's out tonight, did not cover. So they're certainly going to keep it close. I just don't see that being a blowout. So that's a game that Providence can get. Last road win at Nova was 2016. So this is something that really would get a monkey off their back. Senior transfer Lawan Pipkins, he's tremendous from UMass. Very flammable player. One of those guys who can get 30 on a given night. There's not a lot of them. He's one. I remember watching him live at UMass. Now he's there. He was slow to acclimate, but now he's becoming a real flammable player for them. He 40 points in his last 2 games, 6 of 13 from 3-point range. Alpha Diallo, your guy, called him beginning of the year, 8 of 12 from 3-point range last 3 games, which is really his only weakness as a scorer. So if he starts hitting threes, I mean, he can do it all. 35 points against Seton Hall. That was impressive. Providence is an issue.
Definitely an issue, and you're right with Pipkins. Once they inserted him into the starting lineup, it seemed like that solved a couple of problems for them, and it might have opened up the floor. It gave him a little bit of freedom. He wasn't counting his minutes or counting his shots. It played with a little bit of it seemed like he fit right into the culture that is Providence. And Providence is dangerous because they have length. They have length at multiple positions, and they're a little bit bigger at every position on the perimeter and even inside than you think. I think they match up pretty favorably with Nova this weekend. That's a game we'll get a little bit into later. Duquesne makes number 5, now number 4. Dayton earn it, 80-70. The Obi top and baseline windmill dunk was just kind of sick. The Dukes actually match up pretty decently with the Flyers, with Michael Hughes providing a little heft against Obi and Sincere Carey going for 21 and 6 against Crutcher. The Dukes were up at the half on the road here and had the Flyers thinking about a third loss. Mike, what do you take away from the Dayton win over Duquesne?
Yeah, that was a nice win. And Dayton, the question about Dayton and San Diego State, we'll get into it later, is we understand you play in not as strong conferences as some of these other teams. And Gonzaga's gone through this, but Gonzaga right now goes out in non-conference and plays anyone and everyone, so they're different. Right. But you look at Dayton, you look at San Diego State, they really don't have a margin of error that other teams do. So Duquesne ends up losing by 10 at Dayton. Dayton doesn't cover. But still, that's a game that Duquesne actually comes forward and does a nice job. Then tonight, you have Duquesne going up to St. Bonaventure, and they win in overtime at St. Bonaventure. So Dayton looks good. They're very solid. They have 2 things that they're doing that a great team really needs to do. They are winning at home, and they are beating teams that they're supposed to beat. Maybe not by the margin we would expect, but they're doing it. And that win against Mason, I thought was interesting. Mason kept it close. They ended up winning. They didn't cover. I thought it should be a bigger win. So I'm very concerned about San Diego State right now, and I want to see Dayton. I hope they're not slowing down as the year goes on. Most impressive thing about Dayton for me is who's the best player. Obi Toppin's a lottery pick, 28, 1 steal, 1.5 blocks per game. Jalen Crutcher, 15 points, 3 rebounds, 5 assists, 88% from the free throw line, 42% from 3. He's probably another guy that people may think if they like guards, he's better, at least in the college game. But then if you look at the metrics, Trey Landers is probably the best guy. 11 points points per game, 6.5 boards, 35% from three. So they have a three-headed monster. Crutcher makes the shots. Landers is the most efficient. Toppin's the lottery pick. That's a dangerous team. But they have to keep their foot on the gas right now. Don't slow down. Don't get upset in like the second round there or the second game that they play because they'll have a bye in the A-10 tournament. Keep it going, Dayton, because the committee's going to want to drop teams like you in San Diego State. You got to keep it going, get those wins, get yourself the high seed you deserve.
Totally agreed. And that's the danger if they do take a loss in conference. Now, this would be usually the situation that Gonzaga is in, but with BYU and St. Mary's being so strong this year, they don't have that necessarily. We'll get to that game a little bit later. But if Dayton does drop one of these A-10 games, then that turns into a quad 2, maybe a quad 3 loss, and that's like debilitating if you're trying to go for a top 1, a top 2 seed. So totally with you there that it's a little bit dangerous. Keep your foot on the pedal, as Mike said. Mike, number 22, Houston drops a roadie to Memphis, 60-59. Three things here for me. Memphis did not score for like the first 7 minutes of this game. Houston's D is legit and it's real and it's going to be a problem just like it's been in March the last couple of years. 2, Penny has his team competing, after the Tulsa game aside. Since then, they've been in every game and been really competitive. So they used that game as a pivot point and didn't use that game as an anchor to sink the season. And they've been really competitive. And I'll tell you what, Caleb Mills, that guy is for real. That dude is not a not-so-secret weapon waiting to explode in March for Houston. I was really impressed with his play. I mean, I've been impressed with his play this entire season, but he makes that shot at the buzzer, then we're talking about him as like one of the players to watch in March. And that shot just went a little awry. That's all.
Yeah, Houston has a great style. Mills is the real deal, 21 points. Houston has a very unique calling card. Remember, they had Michigan dead to rights until who hit the shot? Was it Livers, Brooks? Who hit the shot in the NCAA tournament that knocked him out?
Oh, no, Jordan Poole.
Poole. Sorry, thank you. Yeah.
Right,
Quentin Grimes did not play in this game. He was injured. I think they missed him. I think if Grimes plays, and listen, we know, Gus, I'm not the biggest Quentin Grimes fan in the world. Okay, we know that.
Gotcha.
But certainly I think he'll make a 3, which is all they would need. So desperate win for Memphis. Home game for Memphis. Houston playing with house money. They're now tied at the top of the AAC. It's a 3-way tie right now with them, Cincinnati, and Tulsa. All 3 are 11-4. So Memphis is hanging on by a thread. They needed this win. They don't make free throws. They are actually, Gus, the youngest team in all of college basketball. They are 353rd in terms of experience. So Penny's doing a nice job here. But remember, if it's close, I don't think they make it because they don't have Wiseman. So the games, just as you count a team's games without their star player a little bit less, you also count the team's games with a player who's no longer there a little bit less because he's not there. So they got to keep winning here. Big game. We'll see what happens. They lost to SMU last night, and they failed to cover. Thank you very much. But they have Tulane away. Wichita State home. I mean, that's a box of chocolates team right now. And then Houston away, where certainly Houston's going to want some payback in that one. So give me 2 or 3, and I'll take it. They'll be 10-8, 21-10 going into the tournament there. So I think that's the best they can hope for.
That smells very Dayton-ish, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, good one. Excellent. Very good. Yeah.
As far as the first 4 goes. Mike, we talked a little Nova earlier. They grinded out a 64-55 win over Xavier. Nova is always one of my blind spots every season, but I have to tell you, this Nova team is growing on me, and I think they have some legit weapons on the offensive end and on the defensive end. I kind of like the way that this team is developing. We talked a little bit about this Nova team with Jeff Nadeau earlier in the season, and I think they're growing on me. I know the game against Providence is going to tell us a whole bunch of things this weekend, and we'll get to that a little bit later, but I got to tell you, it wouldn't be crazy if I found my way putting them into a Final Four in a bracket if the game breaks, right?
Gus, they have the 3 things that we want. Number 1, they take care of business. Number 2, They have a point guard in Gillespie. I'm not saying he's the second coming of a first-team All-American point guard, but they won a title with Ryan Arcidiacono. Okay, so I mean, Gillespie's a veteran. He's been there. He's played big games. He's experienced, smart guy, and they have one of the top coaches in college basketball in Jay Wright. They're 11-4 in conference. They're tied with Creighton, which, watch out, I'm a huge Creighton guy. I may paint my face blue when we go to that opening round in in Thursday. Watch those games. And then they're behind Seton Hall. So Villanova, absolutely. You can make an argument that Villanova, Seton Hall, assuming that they're the team that does well in the Big East tournament, the winner of that game has an outside shot at a 1 seed. You could make a legitimate argument. So Villanova can't lose to Providence, otherwise you won't get a 1 seed. But if they beat Providence and they beat Georgetown last game away, you beat Seton Hall. One could argue, barring a major upset, that could be a 1 seed because it's them, it's Maryland, it's certainly not Duke with Mr. Quick Handshake there the other night at Wake Forest. Although he did, Gus, give a strong handshake. He gave a chest pat. I was very excited about that. But I'm with you. Villanova, why not? In this year, good point guard, good three-point shooting. Ready for this? I'm becoming you. I think Sadiq Bey is an NBA player.
There you go. Get on board.
And I wouldn't have said that at the beginning of the year, but I certainly think he is. And they got Jay Wright. Bang. That's all you need.
Perfect. Talking about another possible Final Four team that I'm sure a number of other people are talking about too. Number 8 Florida State at NC State. Another ho-hum road win for the Seminoles. 67-61 in a kind of desperate Wolfpack bubble-ish type squad coming into the season. They need that defining win, which they got over Duke. And Kevin Keats can break out all the red ties he wants, but they are never going to be a match for the crew neck style of Coach Hamilton. So we have the Coach Hamilton crew neck greater than Coach Keats red tie. This Florida State team can make a Final Four, beat anyone, anywhere, anytime, regardless of what they're wearing.
Florida State, don't look now, is in first place in the ACC. They've now beaten Louisville twice. They came back and pounded Louisville at home after that NC State game. They have won 7 of 8. Here's the deal. There are very few teams that can attack you off the dribble constantly from multiple angles. Guys that you have on this team, Devin Vassell, who's stepping forward as their best player, MJ Walker, all these guys. Gray's a little flaky inside. He's a little Yoli Childs to me. Either he's there, he's not there. Yeah, he's a little shaky. But those are the type of guys that they have. They have Williams, they have Forrest. All these guys who are athletes. And listen, I do not bet on Florida State games. Every time I do it, I get it wrong. Leonard Hamilton can build a program, but he's shaky in game. But then the other year, a couple of years ago with Gonzaga, when Tilly's hurt, bang, they beat him. It's very hard for me to figure out Florida State, but they beat you off the dribble. Yes, they can make a Final Four, even though, Gus, you grab a random college basketball fan and ask him to name 2 players on the team, they ain't getting anyone. Maybe they get Trent Forrest. I doubt they get Devin Vassell. They certainly don't get Raekwon Gray. That's the problem with them. But in this year, why not? They defend, they're long, and they can attack you off the dribble. These help and recover defenses do not want to see this team because they'll turn the corner before the help gets there.
That's for sure. And by the way, they're the way that they disperse their minutes, it's hard for you to get a beat on any one of those players that you just mentioned. Coach Hamilton is doing the exact thing he always does. He spreads the minutes out, and he has multiple weapons ready to go off the bench and in the starting lineup. Really impressed. Hofstra dismantled Delaware 78-62. Only our favorite, Nate Darling, decided to show up for the Blue Hens, and that's 8 straight wins for the Pride. They are trending the right way, as usual, Coach Mihalik. And Blue and Pemberton are a legit backcourt that scares me and everyone else in the CAA and any team that might be a 4 seed and might find the Pride on the other side of their bracket in March. You want to go a little CAA?
Yeah. You know what? The Hoff, baby. Not David Hasselhoff. The Hoff. Joe Mihalik, Long Island, Hofstra Pride. Won it last year, regular season. Did not make the tournament, which was a shame after that great regular season. Hofstra was fantastic. 15-3 last year, and then they lose to Northeastern there in the end of the year tournament, so they didn't get in. He's on a mission this year. Fantastic job. Hofstra right now, 2 games clear. They're 2 games, or game and a half clear, William and Mary, 13-3 in conference. They have done a fantastic job on the road. Amazing. They bonked at Charleston a little little bit earlier, and then they didn't cover, not that I knew that, of course, against UNC Wilmington when they made the coaching change, which was really frisky with them. But since that point, they've banged 8 games in a row out after losing to Delaware at home. Great job. Automatic covering machine, one of the best cover teams in all of college basketball. Not that Coach Mihalik cares about that at all, but we certainly do. Hofstra Pride, what a job this team has done. They're shooting 35.7% from three-point range. They're great at defending the three. Desir Bowie is probably going to be player of the year in the conference, maybe. It's either him or Grant Riller, but he's right there. Pemberton, right. Pull, Mihalik. He lost the big guy from last year. It doesn't matter. Hofstra Pride. The Hoff is back.
Look at that CAA breakdown. That's awesome. I love that. All right, Mike, I got a couple more for you here. I'm just going to run through a few, and then you tell me where your head's at. We had Florida at Kentucky. Florida just looks kind of broke. Kentucky defends at such a high level, and those 3 guards are just kind of scary. We had Oregon defeating Arizona. Peyton Pritchard is becoming the best known Peyton that we know over Peyton Manning. I mean, that guy is constantly a shot maker. I don't know who's a bigger shot maker, he or Geo Baker from Rutgers. What a road win for the Ducks. And, then we'll get into the 2 biggies from Saturday. But you got anything on Florida and Kentucky and Oregon and Arizona?
Why are we not talking more about Kentucky? Is it amazing, Gus? It's just me. They're totally flying under the radar. I don't know what the problem is. They're getting less press than Arizona at this point. Kentucky, for my money, is the second best team right now in the entire country. And I know they're 26 in Ken Palm. I don't give a crap. And I know they lost earlier in the year to Evansville. Get over it, guys. They're on fire. 13-2, leading the SEC. They've won, 11 of 12 games. The only loss was away at Auburn, by the way, which must have been because of Devin Cambridge, but we can get into that a little bit later. But
yes.
Honestly, Gus, on fire. IQ, High IQ in Kentucky. There's the name of the podcast. Emmanuel Quickly, unbelievable. 30 points. They're shooting a 3. Remember I told you, I put that tweet out, that the only thing that stands between them and making a run like the past Elite 8 or better teams for Cal is 3-point shooting. Well, you know what?
Yes.
Number 2 in the SEC, 36.6. Number 1 in 2-point percentage defense, 43.1. And finally, there is a team in America that makes their damn free throws, 79.3%. How is Kentucky underrated? I don't get this. They are. You can get them right now, Gus, 20-1 to win the title. You kidding me? Kentucky, unreal.
Love that breakdown. That's fantastic. All right, Mike, let's get to the 2 biggies. We'll go with number 2, Gonzaga. They fall on the road to number 23, BYU. All I'm going to say here is you had this pegged 2-3 weeks prior. You were on this game. You identified it as a problem spot for Gonzaga, and it was. Now, we watched a little bit of this game when I was, in the neighborhood, hanging out with a couple of, fellow dads. We had the TV on mute, and I have to tell you, the BYU offense looked unbelievably efficient. Coming off a great defensive game prior, Gonzaga's defense looked a little shoddy, a little disoriented, and a little bit shot out. I think their offense still looked okay enough to win a national championship, but I'll tell you what, I think the conversation here is BYU. And Mike, the floor is yours because you had this game nailed a couple weeks prior. Kudos to you. Applause. Well done.
I just, no one wins every game anymore. And I mean, Gonzaga had won, 21 games in a row in the season? I mean, Duke lost to Clemson. I mean, everybody loses once in a while. It just seemed like this was the matchup. Senior night for BYU. They do shoot the 3. Child's inside. And listen, they got some help. Kispert was off. They had some help along the way. This does nothing to Gonzaga. It doesn't change Gonzaga. They can still win the national title. They're still great. They're still one of the best teams. But this was everything for BYU. Absolutely everything. Kids were camping out, Pope said, for 48 hours in 35-degree weather. I mean, seriously, this was their life. And BYU, this was it for them. They shoot the three well. BYU, Gus, 41.9%, the absolute best three-point shooting team in the entire nation. And get this, in conference, 44.3% from three-point range. It was just one of those things. I thought they would lose. I didn't think they'd go undefeated. Why? Because it's really hard, and I don't think Gonzaga's losing any sleep over losing their first West Coast Conference game in 41 games. Okay, I don't think they really care. But it was a nice win for BYU. I think they're dangerous. I heard a guy on Greg Peterson's podcast there, Hooping with Hoops, saying that they're not taking any more BYU futures, or they lowered the odds, actually, because they're getting nervous about BYU. They make the three. They defend the three. They had some big wins earlier in the year, and Childs is an issue inside when he wants to play and not get stupid fouls. So, yeah, it worked out. I was happy. I thought it would happen, but that's it. That's it for that. Gonzaga, great. BYU wiped the brow. Nice celebration. We move on.
Let's get to the other big one. This game lived up to the hype. When you have these numbers next to the teams, you hope that the game can actually support the numbers that are next to the teams, and this game totally did, even at a slower pace. Kansas at number 1 Baylor, number 3 Kansas at number 1 Baylor, totally lived up to the college game day hype. Baylor had a shot from their best player in the air to send the game to overtime. What else do you want from a game? Udoka Azubuike played the game of his career, the game of his season, was absolutely monstrous inside. One of the things that Baylor does really well is rebound, defend. They could not have an answer for him. And I'll tell you what, this Devin Dotson thing is an issue. He has an unbelievable change of pace when he plays, and he is not afraid to give up the ball in crisis in the lane. I'm really impressed with both teams here, but I'm really impressed with the overall game and the play of both teams, and it lived up to the hype. I was so happy to view this game, especially at 12 noon. It was pretty cool, Eastern Standard Time.
Bill Self has Kansas playing at the highest level in the country. Devin Dotson, Udoka Azubuike, you could argue best center, best guard in the country. Point guard, but you could make an argument. They're in the ballpark. When Azubuike doesn't get in foul trouble, this team is deadly. And honestly, what Self's done is crazy. You know, Gus, they've covered and they've won and covered every road game in Big 12 play. Just think about that for a second. Covered and won. And listen, Agbaji, Marcus Garrett, Isaiah Moss, these are not great players. Okay, these are not outstanding players. It's very similar on a much higher level because they're ranked to what Archie Miller's doing in Indiana. Those are not fantastic players. They're achieving above what he's doing here. He's got Dotson. He's got Doak. He had a little dust up with him. They say dust up, right? Whatever that means. But he has them at such a high level. Baylor, fantastic job. Scott Drew, awesome job. But let me tell you,
unbelievable. Yeah.
Didn't hurt them at all, but that was a big win for Kansas. It's still Kansas. For me, it's Kansas, Kentucky right now. They're a little bit ahead of Gonzaga and Baylor in my mind, but it was a super impressive win by Bill Self. They're still the sheriff, even though they didn't win the conference last year.
Totally agree with you on that. All right, Mike, let's get to Sunday for the rundown. I'll give you a couple games here. Why don't you just pick one and go where your mind goes? You got number 9, Penn State falling on the road to Indiana, which you just mentioned. We have Rutgers dropping another road game. This time it's Wisconsin. And, while we're recording the podcast, we saw them just drop a heartbreaker to Penn State. We had number 7, Maryland. They're mortal. They fell to number 25, Ohio State. And then number 21, Butler, continues the free fall. It seems like just a month ago, they were in the conversation for a number 1 overall seed, and they fall to a hard-charging Creighton team. So, Mike, on Sunday, what were your thoughts there when you have Indiana beating Penn State, Rutgers falling to Whiskey, Maryland falling to Ohio State, and then Creighton really showing out?
I'm going to play a sound for you. I want you to guess what it is. Ready? You give up? That was me running to in-game wagering when it comes across my phone. Kamar Baldwin is injured early in the second half and is not coming back at Creighton. I mean, that's basically skeet shooting for Creighton here. If Baldwin's not going to be on the floor. Listen, Creighton's tremendous. Butler is one of those tricky teams, man. You got to figure out. It's going to be tough. They do have a lot of quad 1 wins, but they have question marks, and they may be wearing down. If Baldwin's out for any substantial period of time, give it up. I mean, forget he's as valuable to them as anybody. Maryland falls at Ohio State in a game that Ohio State really needed to have. Maryland didn't. Tonight, that at Minnesota, we're going to see how they do there. I'm rooting for Rutgers, man. I love what Steve Pikiell's done. He's a Stony Brook guy. Was there when they actually made the tournament with Pikiell. Very happy for him. but they need a road win. I think they're going to get in. They could be very first four-ish because the committee loves these nostalgic teams, man. So they're going to want to get Rutgers in when they haven't been in. They won't want to put him in, but he needs a win on the road, and he almost got one at Penn State today, which would have locked it up, I think. Penn State falling to Indiana. I'll stay with this. I do not think Indiana's any good. Archie Miller has done one of the most underrated coaching jobs in the country. They play hard for him. They play great defense. When they're home, they play even better. I mean, Trace Jackson Davis, awesome. Really, really good. Devontae Green's just a shooter. He's a senior shooter. He's fine. He's garden variety. Has a couple big games. But Finney is mediocre. I mean, Justin Smith's okay. Joey Brunk, enough. I mean, the job that Archie Miller has done, I mean, the talent level, the talent discrepancy between Indiana and like Luka Garza in Iowa and Cassius Winston and that crew of Michigan State, and you got Jalen Smith, Mr. Double-Double, and Anthony Cowan in Maryland, is dramatic, but he's fighting. He's gamey. So 4 really good games you point out there, really close, fighting for a spot in the tournament there. I mean, God, I almost want Indiana to make it because Archie Miller's getting a raw deal. That guy can coach his fanny off.
No doubt. I mean, come on. All right, Mike, and let's get to Monday. We had Louisville at Florida State. Florida State wins it again. Florida State looks like one of the best teams in the ACC. You talked about Devin Vassell. Patrick Williams is averaging 13 over his last 7 games. When he scores double digits, Florida State is really tough to beat. And I think that Louisville has some holes. I mean, they held the number 1 position earlier this year. I think they've shown that they're a little bit mortal. How about that? I'm not sure if everybody's filling out their Final Four with Louisville in it as quickly as they might be with Florida State or maybe even Creighton or BYU at this point.
I'll hit the third rail here, partner. You know I like to do that.
Oh, baby, I can't wait.
I think Jordan War is soft.
I love it.
I think he's soft because you know what? It's a little bit too long of a problem. I mean, they got 5 guards. They all look the same. They all play the same way, right? No one's really scoring 20, okay? And War is supposed to be the guy. I mean, he was hitting big shots. I was out at my cousin's house earlier this year. I made him in the middle of the college football bowl season, watched Kentucky, Louisville. You know my cousins. You know how that went over. But, War, you got to step up here for this Louisville team that can absolutely make a run. Chris Mack's doing a good job, but I think they got exposed. Florida State driving it on him, man. That second half, driving it. Defense, getting after it. Oh, my God. Yeah, I'm a little concerned about Louisville, but then again, partner, right? Who are we not concerned about besides Kansas, Kentucky, Gonzaga, Baylor, right? Who are we not concerned about? So they're in there. Exactly. But, yeah, this was a good one for Florida State. That was a hopping place on Monday night. Jeez.
It was a little crazy. All right, Mike, let's get some quick thoughts here. You ready? What are your thoughts on Pitt and the Kevin Stalling tenure? Like, could it got any worse? I mean, I bet like that staff didn't like recycle or use reusable vessels for their coffee cups. It kind of couldn't be a worse look for the Kevin Stalling era, but I feel like in some ways they have to be unbelievably pleased that now they're in the capable hands of Coach Capel now that he's in charge.
Yeah, the first thing that came to mind with this one was the situation with Larry Eustace out at Colorado State. I watched the Colorado State-San Diego State game, and they had a little snippet there on Carvacho, Nico Carvacho, who I love, 6'11" senior inside. And they asked him about the comparison between Medvedev and Eustace, and he gave such a mature answer. He said, listen, I learned a lot from Coach Eustace. It's how to play defense, positioning. I mean, really rebounding position. He was great. It's just a different vibe now. I know that Kevin Stallings can coach. I mean, you can't coach D1 for as long as he did at Vanderbilt or wherever without being able to coach. But you remember seeing him walking off the sideline, yelling at his team there, cursing at his player. That stuff is caustic. You can't have that on the sideline. So, you want a coach who can do both. That's ideal. But right now, I think the emphasis, the old school emphasis maybe would have been on, it doesn't matter on the sideline. That's a little different nowadays. Not with social media, not where everything gets posted right away, not when you have some idiot behind a microphone who critiques Coach K's handshake every time he loses. So, that was the comparison to me is Stallings is a guy who, we know he can coach, but he's not meshing with the team. And obviously, there were some issues that went on there, but Eustace, right. Stallings gone, Medvedev, Capel in, and things are going well.
All right, Mike. What do you take away from Duke, NC State? I think with all the carnage from the weekend and multiple top teams taking losses, does this say anything about the Wolfpack? Do they have like some bubblicious hopes, maybe a Dayton situation for the first 4? You want to talk about the blow-by handshake here by Coach K? I mean, so what do you take away from either one of these situations? I want to give you the floor and have your chance.
Well, the Duke, Duke is Duke, but they only have 4 quad one wins. And can anybody talk about the fact that they can't make free throws? Are we going to talk about that? They lost.
We can. Yeah.
Like, bro, they lost to Wake Forest 113-101, 2 overtimes, fine. But here's the thing. They're shooting under 70% from the free throw line in conference. They shot 91% from the line and still blew the lead with 2 minutes left. It's not like they were missing free throws. They were just turning the ball over. That's very not Duke-esque. So that's a problem. NC State is right on that bubble. They're 8-9 in conference. They're 17-11. They beat Duke. They beat Virginia. They beat Notre Dame. They lose to North Carolina. They lose to Georgia Tech. I mean, they're right there. So it's going to come down to the tournament for them. I like them. I really liked them when they played Auburn. And I've told you this, after Markel Johnson had that ridiculous thing where he got 3 fouls, including a technical, when they were really beating Auburn when Auburn was good, kind of looks a little undisciplined. So a nice win against Duke, and then you follow it up with 2 losses to Florida State and North Carolina. Rough.
Right. Yeah, tough. All right, how about this? How about the 15-year show cause penalty for Penn's former coach, Jerome Allen? That's a long time. Mike, I think the bigger thing to take away from this, maybe besides talking about the length of that penalty, is this a little bit of a peek into the crystal ball for what might happen down the road for a team like Kansas that still has a shoe waiting to drop for its investigation? Should schools or programs that are under the NCAA microscope be worried because of the length of this particular harsh penalty? Is that something that we need to pay attention to?
Yeah, I feel like the NCAA, we've talked about this one, wants to flex their muscles, right, man? And so when you give them a chance, they're going to flex. Jerome Allen, he was the former Penn men's basketball coach. He got that 15-year show cause penalty. He allegedly accepted at least $250K from a prospect's father to train, recruit, and make sure that the player got into an Ivy League school. Obviously, This is a guy that is highly regarded in the coaching circles because Brad Stevens brought him to Boston. 15 years is a long time. Obviously, there's some smoke to this. But listen, you've championed this about letting them get through with the transfers, and you've been right on the money, and it's starting to come. But they're going to take their shots when they can along the way, and it's a shame. I'm sure Jerome Allen's a good guy. Listen, I'm sure he's a really good coach, and I'm sure he just got caught up where everyone's got caught up. I mean, listen, Gus, Will Wade's still coaching. We got him on a phone saying, "Let me close the door." Okay, I mean, so I mean, it's a little arbitrary, but it is what it is.
How about Eastern Illinois down 27? 12 minutes to play, and then come back to win on a Josiah Wallace 3 at the buzzer. Mike, can we just hit the fast forward button? Can you just please tell the listeners that this is what March is going to hold for us in about 3 weeks? Is this really what's going to happen? Please, 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 oh, please tell us that's what's going to happen.
Gus, tell the listeners, how good does that first beer taste on Thursday? I mean, seriously, when it hits the lips. What was that? Will Ferrell, the lips. It hits the lips, right?
Right.
This was a crazy comeback, man. Eastern Illinois. You had Murray State. You thought you had this one in the bag. Hits a 3 at the buzzer. Eastern Illinois 7-9. They've won 2 in a row. Right in the mix of the Ohio Valley. Who is not in the mix of the Ohio Valley? Belmont, Murray State, Austin Peay, Eastern Kentucky, Hike. Take a future on Eastern Illinois. They're so hot right now from 3 to win that. That's what I'm going to do. Take some futures on some low teams there in these conference tournaments.
That sounds like a great idea. And then what about the thoughts on the defense of Sacred Heart on Merrimack? Mike, you want to go with this? This seemed kind of strange. You sent this out as a little tweet, little text. Why would you allow the point guard to get a running start into the offense, even if he can't shoot a lick from 3? That seemed like totally baffling. It seemed like, I don't know, like a game that I'd be coaching with my daughter or something, like some sort of defensive craziness that might happen in a game like that. What in the world was going on there?
Bro, if he had a blindfold on, is that appropriate defense? I know, right? I mean, listen, I coached high school basketball, and I left one kid open once, but we're talking about high school basketball. I mean, this is Division I college basketball. Merrimack's played great. They're hot. I mean, I don't know what the heck that was, but that was a nice win by Merrimack and cover. Thank you very much. Sacred Heart they're doing a decent job, but it was bizarre defense. Merrimack at home can't make the tournament, but they're probably going to win the conference this year. So great story for them, for Merrimack there. But odd defense. It was like a 3-2 flat 3 across the foul line. Kids just standing at the 3-point line dribbling. I mean, it was bizarre.
It was very bizarre. All right, Mike. Let's just talk about the weekend a touch here. Do you have a feel for a team or two that you value after the carnage atop of all the teams, like San Diego State taking their loss, Duke taking a loss, a couple losses, Gonzaga taking their loss, Baylor, Maryland, etc.? Is there a team that has caught your eye as we march closer to the madness?
Well, let's see. I'll answer it, then I want to hear your answer. Creighton is on fire. I mean, they have the style, the DGAF style. Gus, we don't have an explicit rating on the podcast, so I'm not going to define DGAF, but you can figure it out, folks. They have the right style. They can't rebound worth a lick, but Gus, does that matter this year? Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it doesn't matter. I mean, Jarius Lyles was the only one who could probably score there for UMBC. That didn't really matter, so I like Creighton. I've talked about them in a couple other spots that I did. Houston has a style. I mentioned that before. They pound the board. So, again, I'm looking for a team that has a style that does something. Your guy, Peyton Pritchard, you mentioned him before. I mean, 38 points, whatever he had. I mean, he's killing it this year. Dana Altman's a great coach. And, of course, I mentioned Kentucky. So, long shots, absolutely. It's going to come down to the brackets. It's a cop-out answer. We'll break it down, man. But what about you? Who's you looking? Is there an under-the-radar team you like? Or who do you think's like undervalued right now that you're like, you know what? They can make a freaking run.
I know this sounds like, and we've talked about this team before. I don't think it's crazy that somehow Virginia might be getting a little undervalued.
Okay, sure, yeah.
It seems like they might have solved a couple of things on the offensive end, and we did talk about this team earlier. I really think that Dayton has all of the mechanisms, all of the elements that we're looking for in a Final Four run championship type team, that type of thing. Does that make sense?
Sure.
And I think you have to throw Florida State into that mix as well. I think because Vassell is proving to be a really slippery player on the perimeter, and Patrick Williams is proving to be a kind of force on the wing, doing a couple of different things. I think you have to pay attention to them as well. Yeah. And then I'll throw one other one at you. I don't think it's crazy that in a year like this, if you have a player like Marcus Howard who can win you a weekend, and then you find yourself in an advantageous matchup with a couple of upsets, and then maybe he's the best player on the floor in the next round, the next weekend. I think if there's a situation like that, then we're cooking, and because you know that there's going to be an upset or something, and an opportunity and a door is going to open for a team, a program, or a player. And maybe that team, program, or player might be somebody like Marcus Howard from Marquette, or maybe somebody else that we're kind of overlooking at this particular point. But I have a feeling there's going to be an opportunity for that to happen.
Those are all great ones, man. And it comes down to who you think can make a run. It does not matter if they haven't been playing well leading up. It doesn't matter if they had a bad run, lost 3 games in a row like Auburn, Texas Tech did last year. It's going to come down to your instincts, folks. You fill out that bracket. Don't listen to any expert. Go with your gut. See if you can find a team that you think can get hot and has a really nice draw.
All right, let's take a look at the 6-pack of games for the upcoming weekend, Mike. We try to do this every podcast. We get together, we give the listeners 6 games that we're looking forward to. Give them our flavor on it, and maybe what we think might happen. So let's start on Friday, because Fridays are turning into a really cool college basketball evening. Of course, we have the Ivy. Big Ten has snuck in, but the A-10 is always live on Friday. And I'll tell you what, Davidson is going to visit number 4 Dayton. And Mike, I think the big question here is this where the overhyped, during the preseason, Davidson actually shows out and shows up? Is this where Dayton collects that loss? Like so many of the other top teams that we've recapped on the podcast thus far, Kansas aside. So what's going to happen on Friday night in the A-10? Is Davidson and their guard play going to match Dayton, or is Obi Toppin just going to be too big and Dayton's going to win at home again? What's going to happen here?
If you're paying attention, you're going to grab the points with Davidson when this line comes out, and you're going to watch the line drop. Gus, since February 11th, blew out Fordham by 30. Not everybody blows out Fordham, okay? So, I mean, it's still a win. Beats Fordham by 30 at home, okay? Not everybody beats Fordham. Beats St. Bonaventure away by 29. Is pounding St. Joe's on the road, then loses by 1 in a miracle comeback, then beats Rhode Island at home, then pounds LaSalle by 25. This Davidson team is absolutely scalding hot. Dayton is due for a Gonzaga-like bad game to occur in conference. It's coming. Davidson shooting 37% from three-point range. They shoot 76% from the free throw line. This is a team that is under the radar that people think are going to get destroyed. They're going to assume Dayton's going to roll. Do you know teams are shooting 74% from the free throw line against Davidson? They're due for some regression as well. So This is a team, McKillop's got it going. It took them a while. They were brutal for most of this year. But you look at their last 6 games, man, they've been rolling. I think I'm going to take the points in this game.
That's kind of why I brought this up and brought it to the listeners' attention. I thought you might feel that way. I feel similar, and I think once you get to the end of the grind in the conference season, you're just looking to survive. You're looking to get a win in advance, and sometimes those wins might come by just a one singular possession, and that could be that case in this particular game. Let's move on to Saturday, Mike. We talked about this game a little bit earlier. Providence is going to be at number 12 Villanova. This Nova team is kind of gathering some positive karma, but the Ed Cooley squad is rolling, and this win gets them on the right side of the bubble for sure. Mike, the Big East is a grind here. You got to feel one way. Is Providence going to continue their strong play, or do you feel like this Villanova team, with your NBA player, Sadiq Bey, might be a little bit too strong at home?
Villanova not covering a ton of games lately. I'm going to go with Providence here. I'm with you. They're hot. Watch out for Pipkins. He's flammable. You can't just concentrate on Diallo, who's hitting it from 3. Big guy inside Watson. I like Providence here. I know what the points are going to be. Sounds very 5-ish, which, by the way, I guess I put that out on Twitter. Teams that are favored, teams that are underdogs by 5 or 5.5 points are covering at like a crazy rate the last 3 weeks. It's like 80%. And it happened again tonight. If you're an underdog by 5.5 points, what I've been doing is just teasing those games. Give me the extra 4 points, or you want to do a 3-team teaser, give me 6, and then just roll with it. The teams that are underdog, it seems like 5 and 5.5 points for Vegas is a very peculiar line. Home, away, it doesn't matter. I can see this one being one of those lines.
I'm totally with you on taking Providence here, so I think we're in lockstep. And let's give a bonus Big East one. Number 13, Seton Hall is going to go visit Marquette. Do you think this is like one of the matchups of like 2 of the best players in the country with Powell and Marcus Howard? You know, we talked about Seton Hall, and we talked about Marquette being one of those teams that might get an advantageous draw. Maybe Seton Hall falls into that category as well, especially with Gill defending at such a high level on the inside. And you have McKnight defending on an unbelievable level on the perimeter. So they have defensive mechanisms that are really in place that could give Marquette a bunch of problems. Mike, bonus Big East game, Seton Hall at Marquette.
Seton Hall beat Marquette at home, 69-55 back on January 11th. Now they have to go to Marquette. I think it's going to be a super close game. Marquette very tough at home. They're rolling Georgetown tonight as well.
I agree with you. I think home court actually plays a big role here, and it seemed like just a little while ago that Seton Hall had a couple game lead in the Big East, and now it's going to be a bit of dogfight to the end. All right, let's go back to the 6-pack. Number 15 Auburn heads to number 8 Kentucky. We talked about both these teams earlier. Mike, for me, this game is 100% Isaac Okoro dependent. If he plays, then Auburn has a shot here. If he's hampered or he's not 100%, I'm going to go Kentucky the whole entire way. This Kentucky team, we talked about how well they're defending the 3. They have some shot makers on the perimeter. I really like Kentucky here, especially if Okoro is not 100%.
Yeah, Okoro's a special player, probably going to be a lottery pick. Auburn, not great in the backcourt. Auburn, not great from 3. Auburn, not great from the free throw line. And this is a Kentucky team that is rolling, that has covered 6 of their last 7 games. So absolutely, I'm taking Kentucky here.
No doubt. How about number 7, Duke heads to Virginia? The Blue Devils are reeling a little bit here with losses to NC State and Wake Forest, Mike. And somehow UVA is 11-5 and in 4th place in the ACC. They are defending as well as usual and starting to find a little flow and some small answers on the offensive end. Mike, is this another loss for Duke and another blow-by handshake waiting to happen?
Very dangerous game here for Duke. Very, very dangerous. Virginia's covered 3 of their last 4. Covered tonight, 1 by 3 at Virginia Tech. Line, I think, was 2.5. Very scary game for Duke. I'm certainly not betting Duke in this game. I've been screwed by Duke a couple times, but Virginia is very live.
I agree. I think that's worth paying attention to the line and then acting on what the line might be. If you're going to favor one way or the other, maybe a low possession game when the team misses a couple of free throws on the road. That sounds about right for Duke UVA. Mike, number 5 in the 6-pack is Austin Peay at Murray State. We talked a little bit Murray State against the Eastern Illinois game. Both teams are tied 13-3 atop the OVC. Belmont is also 13-3. And I'll tell you what, Terry Taylor just might be the best player that you don't know all the way about yet. The 6'5 guard is averaging a double-double, 21 points, 10.8 rebounds. He averages over a steal, over a block a game. He's shooting over 55% from the field. He is legit stud. The Governors won the last matchup with Murray State by 3. This one's going to be a good one, Mike. You got to feel one way or the other in the OVC.
Oh, Scary Terry is the real deal. Absolutely. Murray State's going to be home in this game. I think it's going to be a close one. Scary Terry, certainly a problem here with Austin Peay. I'll take the home team. Ken Palm's got it about 5. Ohio Valley has some fun stuff up there. So
they do.
Yeah, Belmont, Austin Peay, Murray State, all 13-3. Probably going to roll with the home team, and I'll take a look at the line. If it's more than 5, I'll take the points. If it's less than 5, probably stay with the home Murray State because they're really good from 3 this year, playing hard. You know, the hangover from John Morant, call it the Ewing theory, right? But playing really well, doing a good job there for Matt McMahon.
I tell you what, whichever team is the 5 seed or the 4 seed, and they get that OVC winner, they don't want to play any of those guys. They don't want to deal with Terry Taylor. They don't want to deal with Murray State. They don't want to deal with Belmont being really efficient on the offensive end. Forget about that. All right, last of the 6-pack, number 24, Michigan State visits number 9, Maryland. This is going to be one of the finest point guard matchups that we're going to find this entire season with Winston and Cowan. I guess my questions here are, will Sparty score enough? Will the Terps be steady enough? Will Jalen Smith continue to wreck the box score? Mike, who are you feeling here? Do you feel like Michigan State can go on the road and garner a big win here in conference? What do you got?
Boy, everyone is really overvaluing Michigan State. Can we stop giving points when Michigan State is home? I mean, I know they're going to go on the road here against Maryland. Depending on what Maryland does tonight against Minnesota, that's going to kind of swing me because I think they've struggled. They're down 14 right now with 15 minutes left. They can make that up. They've made runs in all their games. But Michigan State, I think, has a lot of problems. Unless you're a huge fan of Gabe Brown, Rocket Watts, guys like that, I'm sorry, it's all Cassius Winston dependent. They were lucky to escape Illinois. They had the 4 out of 5 losses there with the Illinois win in the middle. They won at Nebraska away. Congratulations. They basically pulled away against Iowa. Depending on your line, they covered that. This is a tough one. They got 2 games, Maryland, then they got to go to angry Penn State team, then Ohio State home. I'm probably going to lean the home team here with Maryland. I've waited for them. I've waited for Michigan State to get going. It just hasn't happened yet. So I'd rather let them do it than to keep riding it, the bet into the sunset there, into the hole.
I'm totally with you. I'm going to take the Terps at home here too. I think again we're going to pay attention to the line here, but I think that Jalen Smith is just playing at a really, really high level, and I think he's starting to figure out how to do it more consistently. I mean, the talent is there, the skill set is there, the length, the athleticism, the whole thing. Now he's just figuring out how to do it all the time, as opposed to doing it in flashes. And I don't think that's going to change here against Michigan State. So I'm with you on that, Mike. Do you have anything else for the listeners out there? There's our 6-pack of games. We ran through Davison at Dayton. We ran through Providence, Villanova, Auburn, Kentucky, Duke, Virginia, Austin Peay, Murray State, and Michigan State, Maryland. What else do you got for the listeners out there, Mike? Anything?
No, man. Great games going on right now. Conference tournament play is going to start. Can't wait. Really exciting. And by the way, nice job on the pod with an SQ there. Sabrina setting the record with all the rebounds, assists, points. Nice job on that one.
It was really fun talking to Howard about Sabrina Ionescu, and it was really cool watching that moment with my daughter. We let her stay up a little bit late because that was a 9 o'clock Eastern game, so we let her stay up to see Sabrina get those rebounds. She was kind of counting in her head, but they had the counter on the screen. So it was a really cool moment for my daughter and I to share that. And now she has one of the players that she looks up to is Sabrina Ionescu, a female athlete. It's really cool. So thank you for that. It was really fun talking to Howard. He did an unbelievable job. And listeners, if you like what you're listening to, you like the content that we're trying to hand out to you, please don't forget to give the podcast a kind review on your podcast consumption vehicle of choice. Don't forget to give the podcast a follow at SDS Podcast, Efficiency of Keystrokes, of course, and don't forget to give Mike a follow over at Randall Rant. He is insightful, educational, and entertaining, all in one nice, tidy little package. And listeners, we just want to say thank you for allowing us to share this best time of year with you. We're glad to keep you company on a commute or on a couple of errands. And as we always say, we'll catch up with you before you know it. Cilantro, gratulatia, arigato.
IQ, baby.
I'm addicted to the appetite. It's a seat in the van.